So this is a massive project. I've been looking to make more creative builds all throughout in Enshrouded, and I have to say this is by far one of the most interesting ones that I have started. And I had to break it into a multi-part series to encapsulate all the building that I'm putting into it. Honestly, just getting to the build location was half the battle. This is how I started building a sky castle in Enshrouded. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to see the upcoming episodes of this series. To kick things off, the location that I am building at, a sky castle, can't just well be placed anywhere. It needs to be way high up, like super high up off of the ground. And the only way to get high up off the ground is we gotta build there. Initially, I thought about doing somewhere in the Albany Summit, but the first spot that I looked at was the Pillars of Creation. And now in one of my previous videos, I had talked about building there, so I figured this would be the best choice. It's a lot more accessible to get to, albeit with some climbing and parkour, but overall, you can get quite a bit of height just from starting here. Now, I did not go to the southern Pillar of Creation because the buildings there prevent you from placing a flame altar, but that's all right. This other pillar is perfectly fine. Once here, now the real journey begins. So I'm looking to build this place high up in the sky, right? Well, I need to place a flame altar that is way high up in the sky. And to do so, that requires a bit of a grind. To get the flame altar to be placed on something, you need to essentially tag team your way all the way up to the top of where you are going to build. You create a flame altar, use platform jumping to climb higher, and then place your next flame altar as far and as high as possible. Then you teleport back to the other altar, deactivate it, and then jump to the next one and climb again. It's very simple, rinse and repeat, but it takes forever. For a marker, I'm trying to get on par with the height as this floating castle that's off in the distance. This part literally took like 3 hours to build up to. Like legit, it was kind of a pain to just go through some of this arduous climb. I actually ended up watching like other YouTube videos while I was doing this because it was just turn off your mind and go. Once I had gotten to my height, I started removing the platforms that I used to get here, and now it's time to work. So the first thing I start building is by placing some of the dirt all the way around the flame altar. I want it to be like a giant floating landmass that this castle is on top on. So I start by throwing all the Springlands dirt that I have gathered. I have to create a believable bottom for this platform, and eventually it will continue to be built out. However, for now, I just need to have a large flat ground to work with. Now, I do bounce back and forth to gather more dirt, which technically I could just rake this land here, flatten it out, and then dig some of it up. But going back to Springlands and just digging straight for a while honestly feels like it gets the job done a lot faster. This process takes about an hour of building, then raking, then building, then raking, and we get a relatively flat ground to work off of. Now comes the foundation. For the foundation of this castle, I am using city wall blocks because I feel like it kind of fits the idea of a floating castle vibe, but it also looks super clean when put together. I do a 5x5 grid with the 64 material block size to create a large flat area to work with. Not only does it grant foundation, but it just looks clean once everything is set up. And I know in the future with all of this, I'll create something a bit more unique than a large flat area. In most of my builds, I simply focus on the large open areas to create first that can be malleable later as the build goes on. In most of my builds, you know, I just let the uniqueness strike me as I'm going through it. And if you've seen my previous build videos, I get ADD and start doing a whole bunch of different things. It's as it the moment catches me. This takes a bit to farm the stone, create the blocks, and then go back and forth, so be prepared to dig out quite a bit of stone to get it done. Once the foundation is complete, now I head back and create the initial walls of the inside of the castle. These right now are more of a placeholder than anything, as I definitely will come back and revisit how they are placed and make them look more believable, as currently they are just a simple double wall build, and it's okay, it's not great. Now, if we are this high up, we need to have launching towers. These are places where you can climb up and launch from easily. Don't worry, I am so high up that even if you jumped off the top, it would take a few minutes for you to fall to the bottom. Truth be told, I run out of stamina while my flight down if I'm using my glider. It's really, really high up. We are really high up there. Well, the first tower is really the only one I set up for the initial launch for myself. So I go for a more circular build, and while circles aren't technically a thing in Enshrouded, you can create the almost circle-esque type building by using diagonal blocks on the corners. You have 4 sides that are placed right in the middle, and then diagonal blocks connecting them all from the sides. and simply just build up from there. It's actually simple once I have created the foundation. It's just simply by placing all the blocks up in a straight line from there. I have this tower on the north side of my build. I can easily jump from here and hit almost anywhere in the map. But after about 30 minutes, we have our base structure. Now, to mix with the city wall blocks, I chose the conifer wood blocks. I don't know why. I just really like them. They look very nice, and when they're paired with stone structures, it legitimately makes me happy. I love the way these guys look. Conifer wood is a bit of a pain to harvest, but it's really not all that bad. I create a diagonal staircase starting from the inside of the tower and filling all the blank spots all the way up, so that I have a place that I can essentially just run around the edge and get all the way to the top. Matching the bottom corner with the previous edge is really no problem. And once I'm up at the top, I use the conifer wood again to create an expanded launching pad with a jumping deck on the north side here. Now, at some point, I do realize that I'm going to use grappling points to allow for speedy traversal, but overall, this is very simple to get up to and go. Grappling points are also going to come in handy in the future when I have smaller connecting islands from the main one, as I may just want to have some of the survivors up here to really create like a floating fortress kind of feel. Once the deck is complete, I match it with some equally spaced stone pillars and put a hay roof on top. This tower is just about done. In most of my builds, I try to create some kind of realism, and one of the most important things that I have in realism is the supporting underneath structures. So when I build a deck, I always try to support underneath to allow more of a reasonable and kind of like believable launch pad. Tower complete. Now, the residence tower is where my character will be living, and this is one that I'm going to want even higher than my launching tower. For this, I simply used the large flat 64 chunk city wall blocks all the way up high. This is really to make the feel of the height and gravity of where we are. Now, this bit was time consuming, probably took me about another 30 to 45 minutes, as the outer wall is double edged. And for me to have a fully sealed and fully matched up edge, it's kind of a pain, because then you have to parkour around on the jumping blocks. And to get all this height, you got to farm some more city wall blocks, of course. Well, I work my way all the way up to the top, and this will be the highest point of my build, but it's looking nice. The real trick is using all the floating platforms as your movement blocks, so you can kind of like move around and build easier. Without them, this would be a pain to complete if you were using scaffolding. Once the outer walls are complete, it is now time to create another winding staircase out of the conifer wood. If you thought the previous one had a lot of wood, wait till you see this one. Once we get up to the top after about like 10 minutes of building, we are now filling in the largest section of this build thus far, creating a massive loft for my character to live in. So I create a stone wall precipice above the top of the tower to offer a smaller room leading into the main room. This is to have a bit of a rounded edge, but not as much as my launching tower. The idea for this room is to be more like my storage and materials room, but that will come much later. I have to place quite a few of these blocks individually to get them to the area that I'm looking for, but overall it's looking quite dandy. After creating the higher rounded edge of the tower, I go and create the main living quarters of the room with my character, which of course is all conifer wood, and it extends over where the stone is down below. So this eats a lot of conifer wood blocks, so I bounce back and forth farming the trees to get the wood. I mean, it's a large room and I'm building it basically out of thin air, so what did I expect it for it to be not a lot of materials? I don't know. Now, what's really fun about this is that I've continued the rounded edge to match the stone below. I didn't give it a straight square floorboard. I gave it more of a unique kind of circular area. And now it has a slight circular area, not as much as the launching tower or anything else, but it gives the aesthetic. Once this is complete, it is time to place the roofing. Personally, I love the straw roof block, as in my mind, I would be like, oh, well, you need to have lighter materials as you get higher on the build, as, you know, it would weigh less. Well, but if I am truly looking at realism, it takes like one bad lightning storm and my whole build is toast. Boy, I did not plan that through. So the straw blocks are built and they fit the roof's aesthetic pretty damn well. And it gives me a massive, larger open area above my living quarters, which at some point I'll come back and possibly create a few windows with gables for natural lighting. Perhaps rearrange the shape of it. But for now, the idea is the foundation of a build, and it certainly will evolve as the build goes on. I also want to point this out here. Despite this building being massive, it is actually so small from a distance. I was expecting it to be much bigger, but damn, I guess I was wrong. On my way up through the residence tower, I poked some archer holes into the walls. These are very simple, but it allows the natural lighting from the sun to come in, removing the absolute need of me having to create torches and such everywhere around here. Very simple and straightforward. Now, with of course the living quarters being presented up here, I like big decks and I cannot lie. It's so tall. Well, I created an opening on the south side of this building to allow for a deck to be placed so that I have a place to relax as well as jump off of if need be. Before I finish up this part of the build, I do have to create a sealed roof. I do have to seal it to prevent rain and creatures from getting inside. So I used the rest of the conifer wood blocks to create a nice large platform that is above the main living quarters. This will come in handy, especially when I am looking for decorating ideas or to really assist in the actual bed placement. But I create some more underneath supports underneath this deck outside, again, to make it look more like it's supposed to be there. Truth be told, it's a massive floating castle way high above the ground. Nothing makes sense here. Nearly done here. I go inside and create one more level inside of the main loft area, and that's probably where the bed will be. I'm more likely than not, I'll have either a grappling point or a ladder to get up here. And I think on that edge is where I'll create the window gable so that my character has something to poke his head out to and look and see and get that natural light as the sun starts to rise. But all in all, this build isn't looking bad. My next objectives will be to build out the large grounds underneath the tower, expanding its living space, but also making it more believable that a massive chunk of land was ripped out of the earth and floated up above. Once that is complete, the next objectives will be to create the other aspects of the castle, making the walls more believable, building them more thick and solid with parapets all put throughout. Once that is complete, then I'll be creating another small floating island that gives a more believable feel that they are all connecting large chunks of land, you know? Lastly, once that is all completed and at the end, and this will probably be the last part of the build, is the decorating. That'll be a whole video in and of itself. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the rest of this series. As always, stay caffeinated, folks.